Come and get started on a new mission, a new direction, a new intention. Welcome to 5.8G Alive at Connections 50 Plus. I am Terry-Ann Joseph Brathwaite.
And I am Jennifer Gibbons Joseph, catering to all your prospects in the third act of life.
Economic well-being, social gratification, personal fulfillment.
Join us on Wednesday at 6 p.m. on Connections 50 Plus Facebook page, YouTube channel,
and on Gael the Caribbean. Good afternoon, friends. Hello. Welcome to 5.8G Alive, brought to you by Connections 50 Plus. My name is Terry-Ann Joseph Brathwaite, one of the co-creators of Connection 50 Plus. And with me, as usual, my colleague.
Hi, welcome, and good evening to you. I am Jennifer Gibbons Joseph, the other co-creator of Connections 50 Plus. Nice having you with us this evening.
Yes. Jennifer, how was this week? How was your past few days? How has life been going?
How was it? What stood out to me is as I said, I'm celebrating Lent being Catholic. I actually had went a retreat on Saturday, and it was a beautiful retreat where we went within, and I felt so refreshed. And so that has stayed with me. That day was really, really a beautiful day.
Yeah.
For the rest of the week, I don't recall what I did,
Is that symbolic of your being in the
It means it was relaxing.
Oh gosh. I have been finding that life has not been hectic, but I have been finding these days that like at least 3 times for the week, I have to lie down. And I keep wondering, Terry, what are you doing? What are you doing? And as I told you earlier, I don't know if it's the different stages of life, but then I have to give the joke. People I've gone into Jennifer's position because I'm fixing house now, not my house. But I am dealing with our family home with my mom's passing, and dad is now at a retirement home. So I am doing project management. I mean, like Jennifer now, but I have to be checking, and I think between that and some of my other commitments with my parish and other things have really they have me active. So I have to. I think that's why about 3 times a week, my body just says, would you please lie down and keep quiet and give me a break?
I just remember why I did nothing. I pulled a ligament from my exercising. So I could hardly walk. Yeah. I was wondering what I did. That's what happened.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But and that discussion, that topic of check on ourselves and what are we doing? You'd realize, listeners, YouTube, Facebook. But wait, before we go forward, you're on YouTube right now. Hit the subscribe button. It doesn't mean that you are going to be charged anything. All it means is that YouTube recognizes you as a follower. And every time we launch a program, you will automatically get a reminder. But to make sure you get that reminder, you see right next to the subscribe button, it's usually a red or blue. You see a little bell. That bell, if you hit it, guarantees you get all of our notices. So instead of depending on us to send you a link and remind you, just hit the subscribe button and you're on like boiled corn. Yes.
Rihanna, we did get, and thank you for those who did that. We did get a couple new subscribers.
Great. Wonderful.
And some comments. And let me say the comments who, well, I press it and I'm not sure you know, they were waiting on some response. Just go ahead and press it,
Once you
you
press it,
know?
it's done. You just have to press, nothing else. But anyway, over the last couple of weeks, well, week before, we started a discussion about us as parents to our adult children. And we were talking about whether there is a change or difference between how we deal with girls and how we deal with boys, or our men and our women, and how that translates into the kinds of adults they're going to be. And last week we had a wonderful, refreshing conversation with 3 friends. So we really want to get back to that discussion of how we relate to our adult children. Because it's very easy, Jennifer, for us to get distracted with the young people and all the things that are happening to other people's children that we see in the news across the Caribbean, everywhere. But there are some things that are right in front of our faces that are well within our sphere of decision, of sphere of choice, that we think it is very important that we consider. So today, we want to talk about, are we really being true to ourselves and true to our children? So let's sit back and get into it.
Tarian, what is very, it's a concern for many parents today. And well, not today, but one of the biggest concerns, I would put it under financial. And when I say financial, there are so many different aspects. But I want to start talking about our assets, our legacy. We had a program before when we had a professional come in and we discussed a lot about legacy. But in this case, let me say living legacy, your assets. And that is because it is very challenging for our adult children now to be able to own their own homes. And as a result, and coming out of the pandemic, we found many of them had to resort going back to their parents' home, and going back because they're hoping to either save enough money, as we would say, catch themselves and move out. But the thing about that is, we as adults, as the parents, really should sit down, because sometimes they may come back and say, okay, we're going to be living with you for a year or 2, and then we move out. But with the challenge financial situations these days, they may be staying much longer. Some of us may have other children or adult children living with us. So that is an area I would really like us to chat about. And it creates a lot of discomfort sometimes, a lot of I have to use the word confusion, confusion among the siblings there. And traditionally, you would find that the child, the adult, and we're talking about the adult children, that may remain in the home, they are there because they may have been the ones not as financially strong as the others. Okay. So you may find, let's say we have 3 or 2. Those that can afford to move out because of the nature of their jobs and their income, etc., have moved on. Those that stay, or the one that stays, not particularly because they so want to be there, but the financial situation requires them to stay. And so if that is the case, another adult comes back in with their children and they have that one there with their children, It's chaos sometimes. And Terry-Ann, I believe that is happening a lot, or has happened a lot since the pandemic. And from the talks, with friends and discussion, it seemed to be something that creating a real problems and people not sure how to deal with it,
Mm, mm,
you know? And I think that's something has to be addressed. And the best way to address that is being real, you know, coming together and having that discussion as how, as a family, they can move forward, whether it is extending a house, building a next, doing something with the property to make it easier for those who can't afford, etc., etc. Yeah.
mm, mm, mm.
So that's one aspect. I mean, there are many other aspects of the financial situation, but I'm just bringing up that
Yeah,
particular one
yeah.
because I find that one seemed to be very upfront at this time.
Mm. The thing about it is, I don't think it is a pandemic problem. I think it was happening long before the pandemic. The pandemic worsened it.
Yeah.
Um,
But you don't see the pandemic really escalating that issue?
no, I think the pandemic, I think the pandemic has been so huge, it's a lot of things have been put on the pandemic. We were suffering from underemployment of our young graduates, our young school leavers for the past, I would say, about 10 to 15 years. And that underemployment situation. So if it's the last 10 to 15 years, let's take 3 years out for the pandemic and shift ourselves back.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be 7 to 12 years. If you talk to bankers, I'm sitting on the board of a credit union, people have been struggling for housing, and I'm going to stay on the area of housing for a long time. Just think
Yeah.
of the demand for housing, government provided housing. 20, 30 years ago, that was not something middle income people thought about at all. Government
Yeah.
housing, I don't want a government house, I'm going into a private commercial development. But since our last boom, which would have been the early 2000s, and real estate prices skyrocketed, I think housing became extremely unaffordable for many people when houses suddenly became 900,000, 1 million, 1.3
Yeah.
million. And I'm talking TT dollars here. And now, the same government house is 1.1, 1.2. And if you're going onto the open market to get an average size home, you are dealing with between 1.8 to 2.5 million dollars to get a mortgage for such a property. But the mortgage on such a property is upwards of $10,000
Yeah.
at the low end. And if your mortgage, the banks usually say your mortgage cannot be more than 1/3 of your salary. If your mortgage is $10,000, it goes to say your take home needs to be in the vicinity of 30. And
Yeah.
our adult children just don't have the capacity to have, even if they have a partner, a joint income of 30,000 take home, not gross, take home.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So this problem of housing, meaning that I can't afford to own my own space. And I think it's also not afford to rent my own space because with the increase
I was
in
about to
housing,
say that.
the rents have also escalated. So I don't believe it is an issue of the pandemic. A lot of things have come out, and we could go in terms of before the pandemic, how young people were dealing with a lot of these issues. It's like they were living in groups. they were sharing,
I guess
sharing housing and so on.
From my experience, as I said, from talking to friends or, in some cases that as clients is that there's situations also, and I'm hearing you that is not new, but I still believe it's escalated
If I would
with the
finish,
pandemic.
if I would finish, what the pandemic has done is, with the pandemic shrink in employment opportunities and job losses, it has made whatever situation you had worse. And if you raise the issue of siblings in a parental home, many of them, if you had 4 children in a home, all right, 3 may have gone out on their own renting because they had a good job or whatever it is. If they lost that job, or they got reduced income, or just the cost of living has gone up, they've come back home. A lot of people.
So that is the reference I was making as a result of the pandemic.
Persons who had migrated, but the thing about it, it was it was a problem that existed long before. And now people are confronted in that is lots of big people in small spaces, and the crowd is growing, you know. I think that's one part of the issue. I think, Jennifer, another critical issue is you have the problem of a lot of adults living in a house, but you also have the issue of where properties are left. And people cannot, let me not say property. Property gives the sense of wealth and abundance. The family home. The family home. Wherever that family, that little 2x4 cottage or sprawling mansion. It is left. And because siblings are challenged financially, some want liquidity and one may want a house. And there is a battle royale in the ones who want to sell the house to reduce my debt. Let me get some money to reduce my debt and get through with some things in life. And there may be another one who has no house, no home, nowhere to go, can't afford rent, and is saying, well, you all have somewhere to live already, let me live here. And the others are saying, I want my share of my inheritance, I have stuff to do. So I think there's a challenge to the current living arrangements where everybody comes home. And then the other side of it is where people want different things of the legacy left to them. Some want cash and some want the asset. So it is a big challenge.
Tarian, is not our custom to get together and discuss financial issues and situations like that. And at that, it creates a lot of problems among siblings. And I see now, to me, is the time for us as the parents to get our adult children, whether they're living with us or not, to chat about it, to really discuss our assets, which we tend not to do. We tend to keep it secret. And I remember when we had Bernard Shepherd, our attorney, sharing and giving us information about legacy. And he said something that when I was referring to my mom, and he said, we as adults have a choice as to whether we want to reveal what is in the will or not. And when he said that, it took me aback a bit, because I always advocate openness, because I feel openness will help. So for those who may not want to reveal what they're doing with their assets and prefer after death for their parents to find out, I think should then try and put something in place to knowing what they're going to be putting in the will, knowing their plans, that put things in place and don't, I have to use the local word here, don't set up children. You understand? Don't set them up. Because a child might be living in the house, believing that when that parent dies, whoever dies, the last parent dies, that house may go to them because for all years they're either living there or for whatever reason they believe it coming to them, or they may feel that, okay, it can split up evenly among the siblings. And if at death, our plan is not to do that, then I feel it's only fair in some way to guide that child or do something that they wouldn't feel devastated or they won't be really in a mess at the end of the day.
I don't really agree with that. I
That's okay.
remember one of the things he said is you have the right to determine what happens to your assets. And because of that, you don't have to reveal anything. I think the problem
Yeah.
is that if I choose not to reveal, the child who sits expecting and doesn't come out straight and say, tell me. Now, if I tell you, I'm not going to tell you. You've got to provide for yourself. And a lot of people, and it's not the child now, it's us. It's us we're talking about here.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sit and give sacrificial labor, sacrificial time with the expectation that everybody will see that and believe that it is justified. But if I decide that my third child, who has nothing to do with anything, will get the house, that's my right. Unless I tell child number 1 or the sacrificial child number 4 that it is not yours, then the position of the law is you don't have the right to know. And I think a
I
lot of
agree with the
us,
law. I'm not
no,
necessarily agree with the law.
no,
That's
no,
the law.
but I'm
But I'm
saying
dealing on
a
the
lot of us,
practicals, the reality.
a lot of us who sit with our difficulty waiting, and a lot of us compound it because we may sit in our own space, but we're giving our children false hopes.
Well,
So,
that's what I say. We're setting them up.
So I think one of the things that we have to tell people frontally is that if you don't know the asset is yours, assume it isn't. Assume it isn't. And it is and not it is not for the person who will decide how to deal with their legacy to inform or change, because that's and the thing is, if I know I don't want child number 1 or 2 to have the house or the jewelry set or the whatever it is, because I know they can't handle it. But during my life, if I tell you what's my decision is, you're going to terrorize me for the rest of my days, then I'm not telling you anything. You know, but I
That
think
is why.
part of the reality is that if something isn't said to you and you don't see that document, let us be real. Assume it isn't. And with that case in front of you, then say, all right, who are my dependent adult children? What, do I set up a big bacchanal with the aunts and uncles when ma dies or pa dies? Or do I say to them, look, let's get ready, because this may not come to me. If it comes to me, fine. But if it doesn't, and one other thing I remember, Jennifer, and I think it was said, Bernard himself also said it, that in most instances, if you really want to preserve generational wealth, it is best to name a single person for major assets like houses and stuff, because other than that, it has to be divided, sold and cash divided, and a big chunk of wealth therefore leaves the family, and you end up with cash. And what is cash used to do sometimes?
Well, I go back and I am just chatting from experience being out there and dealing with a lot of situations like this. And as I said before, okay, I am not disagreeing, those who don't want to reveal what their legacy, what they're leaving, etc. Okay. But my thing is, if you don't want to do that, you should also be aware that the decisions you are making in the interim, right, would make a difference in the expectations. Okay. So if, for instance, you have a situation and your house is your main asset, and you have 3 kids or 2, and you don't want to let them, because as you said, you may realize one will be better financially, whatever the reason why, how you're distributing it, that's okay. But for instance, if let's say that child that you let him come back to live in the house is not the child that you're going to leave the house for, but you don't want to tell them that, then you should have without letting out what you're going to do in the will and that they're not getting the house, you should really have some sort of arrangement, discussion, letting them know, listen, this is a temporary arrangement I want you to get into, because it's better you have your own, that type of thing. By not saying anything like that to them, and let them, and they feel and expect that they can just stay there and they have shares in the house. That is my issue with that. So in other words, that child who expecting to inherit part, half, whatever, sort may not think of still looking to get their own.
And
This is
Jennifer,
my reality of situation.
I hear it, and I really do believe that in this day and age, we've had so many examples of that child who expected. I think in this day and age, if it is not explicitly, you see the doing servitude with the expectation, you're setting yourself up. I really do believe
Well,
that. And
in
once
this day
it
and
is
age,
not clear,
it is a reality. It is a reality in families.
yes, and I'm saying that, and this is why we're having this conversation. So
Yeah.
to people who find themselves in that place, you can't, you can't, I will use my family as an example. It's clear what the will, you know exactly what is going to happen. In my opinion, is a pack of nonsense. Yes, Daddy, you hear me, because I told them already, it's a pack of nonsense, because they have deliberately set it up to, anyway, the only way their wishes can be carried out is for the asset they want to be preserved to be sold, which makes each of the children poorer because the value you're going to get individually, the sum of the whole is always greater than the sum of the parts. So you have it both sides. But I think one of the things that I learned from that is that, and I take that away, if you do not know and you've not been told, stop the expectations and assume the worst. Assume the worst. So even if it means that you have to move out and get a job, and therefore you can't care for mommy full time as you were doing, hoping to get the asset in your name, then have that conversation. Because if you don't, and putting the pressure on mommy or daddy, or even ourselves, we are doing that to some of our children. To whether it is to bribe them to continue taking care of us or whatever it is we're doing. You know, the thing about it, I believe that you have to be clear. And if you don't know, if this has not been assigned to me and the family is not aware and I'm not taking, you tell me privately and say, don't tell the rest.
Yeah.
If that is not clear, then if I have sacrificed working to deal with your affairs with the expectation and you didn't tell me for sure, then I set it up myself that when the time comes and the 3, 4, 5, siblings get together and they say, I want my share, I am not in a position to buy them out because I've
That
not been
happens.
working.
And
And the
Terry
only
Ann,
thing that can be done is to sell it. And the amount that I can't get nothing for myself.
but
So,
Terry Ann, I could recall many situations where the property had to be sold and divided up. And the last situation I know of, actually, that was the best decision. Now,
only
it
thing you could
varies obviously with the families. That in that situation, that was the best situation, because among the siblings, there were those that if they had gotten $100, it was better than say they have shares in something that they don't know when it have to go down because it's a legacy within the family. So it varies, but from this discussion, it is clear that we as the adults have to make some serious decision, face some reality, and not just sit back and because we're afraid to make decisions, we're afraid to make that will, we're afraid to look at, like, if we have a preference, you like this one better than the next.
it might be
So
with
we need
common
to
sense.
examine,
Yeah.
we need to examine ourselves, and as you said, be true to ourselves, be true to our children, as knowing the situation, and we're looking at finances, and we're talking here about mortgage, but there are the other situations in terms of financial. We are looking at just support out
But
of your pension.
one thing I will say before we come off of that, we have to also, is really us, this 5.8G cohort, being really honest. Because if you leave an asset worth $1.3, $1.5 million to a person who cannot maintain it, you can be turned down the road for that person. They're either homeless as soon as you pass, or they're homeless five years down the road.
Very true.
And you cannot
Very
maintain. And very often, the person who has sacrificed and give up life with the expectation, not even having a conversation with siblings or anything like that, is setting themselves up for homelessness.
Yeah.
Because you will inherit the, whether it is the bungalow or the sprawling 5-bedroom mansion, and when my gone and my pension not there and everything is not there, you cannot maintain it. And then it falls to ruin. And sometimes we have to say, it's really a discussion of look at the house that you're living in, look at your expectations for your children's position, and can you maintain it? And can you afford to sacrifice your working years, not earning, not saving, not trying to get the government house, the little cheaper house, and setting yourself up to some real trouble later on because you can't afford to maintain the asset that you want.
Yeah, and that's why in some cases, Terry Ann, and that's if your decision is to keep the assets among the siblings within the family, it may be, you can have a discussion about how you can do some enhancement to the house, renovate or something that increases the value, and you may have the children that can afford at the time to get a mortgage, if a joint among the siblings, to do what is an apartment, whatever it is. So these are considerations, but it can only be done when you know your situation. You know your situation, you're being real. And because let me tell you, I have known of a situation like that where two of the siblings can afford, they say they can't afford to put up any money to do anything. And if you can't afford to put up any money to do anything, then you don't expect your siblings to build it for you.
Out of
So
it.
you have these different options, but you need to know your circumstances and make that tough decision. Make
Yeah.
that tough decision on it.
Jennifer, I could give an example. I'd use myself personally. And, sometimes my siblings tell me I have no soul. My father told me I have no soul in certain matters. I have plenty soul in others. I look at my current situation. The family home needs to be renovated. So I am faced with having to deal with the renovation of the family home. The family home is the main legacy that's being left by my parents. My siblings live abroad, and before the home is rented or sold, renovations have to be done. Even if I decide one of my children would live there, renovations have to be done. Nobody is having a discussion about who or what. This is not an asset that is coming to any one person. This is an asset that's coming to all. But who is doing the renovations? Terry Ann, I will not make an assumption that my siblings are going to contribute to the renovations. I'm not even asking them. What I'm doing is keeping track of my bills and making an agreement that I am making a loan to my father to fix his house. And the repayment to me from my money for that renovation is going to come out of the rents. And if he dies before my loan is done, it's coming out from that asset. So my siblings, I will have first charge on the assets. Now, many of you all probably raise your jaw. I know your jaw drop.
I'm now going to tell you, as far as
I,
people concerned, you taking over.
no, I'm not taking over. I understand that I will
Yeah.
not wait until we are in a place of distress to raise. Excuse me, it's a good bit of money I spend renovating this house to be told them, but oh gosh, is your father? Is it? No, I take it like you took the money out of your retirement funds. I took it out of my funds, and I expect that to be repaid with rentals. But if it don't get rented and the house has to be sold, is a debt he has. And one of the first things that had to be paid is me. Now, a lot of people are not brave enough to make a decision like that.
They're not brave enough, but they're not aware of a lot of things. They don't have the knowledge and they
Jennifer,
don't
if,
seek the
if they have
knowledge.
been watching Connection 50 plus, they're aware. I have made that decision based on our conversations with Bernard Shepard, our conversations with Keith King, our conversations with Maxine King of First Line Securities, our conversations with Jennifer Rouse, where she has, and our conversations with ourselves, knowing the
Let me just
situations people get into.
for our audience, I'm sure you're aware when you're driving around sometimes, you see many homes abandoned. Some
With
looking
grass
really
growing,
nice.
vine growing on
And
it.
you're passing and you're saying, but that house was such a beautiful house. So and so was living there. And since they died, look at what happened. In most cases, it's because the beneficiaries either cannot afford, then each one waiting on the other one to fix, and they just don't want to seek, and Bernard spoke about it. They don't want to pay for legal advice.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them can't even afford Terrian to probate a will.
Yep.
They're waiting on one person because the others are doing it, and it's a whole confusion. And that asset at the end of the day, guess what? It remains right there. And the longer it stays there after, and it's many years, I'm sure you all could point out some houses that they're abandoned for years. on land that is really, I mean, has wood,
Land in the middle of
and
commercial
nothing is
areas,
being,
residential areas. The
nothing
city
is
council have
being
to sue
done.
you.
And that is because we, on the 5.8 stage, this is time for us to look at it, take action, and for us who have elder parents, like in Terry Ann's case where she still has a father, my case I have a mother. Those of us who have parents with assets, you're not asking them to leave it for you.
No.
What you're doing is advising them to look at the situation and put things in place. They don't have to tell you what, but you could just let them go for some legal advice.
Yeah.
If you don't want to have any part of it, advise them, let them go for legal advice, because many times that same legacy, that only asset you may have, and many of us, that's all we have as the main asset. It's really hard when you work so hard to acquire that at the end of the day, you close your eyes and nobody gets it. Okay, Terry, and we could move on that.
Yes. Protect yourself.
You know?
That's my point. Protect yourself.
Yep. The other, when we're looking at financial support, and we're talking, remember, we are talking about us, we are talking about being true to ourselves or our children. We need to look at how we spending our returns on our investments, how we spending the money that coming in our pension, pension monies. Because again, and we're dealing with real situations here, that we can find ourselves supporting, paying school fees for the grants because, we want the best for them, helping out, giving for down payment of car, all these things for them, even rents, in some cases, actually paying their rents. And we are doing all that because we think, we expect, when we sacrifice like that now, and I'm saying sacrifice for those who may think it's sacrifice, for others, they may not look at it as a sacrifice. But the fact is, we're using up our monies that we hoping to have for down the road. We're using it now with the expectations that by the time we reach 80s, 90s, where we really cannot move as we want to, or emergency, we need help, whether it's operation, for whatever reason, we expect our children to support us then because we believe we supported them when they were in need. That don't normally happen. Right? So we have to manage our expectations of our children and not link it in what we have done for them. What, in the early Syrian, no, I shouldn't say in the early, I'm 70 plus in my era. For those of us who send our children overseas to study, or I shouldn't say overseas, who pay for them to do any other course, whether locally or
Right
not.
here. When it's trade, we
Wherever it
pay
is, as
wherever.
long we take our money, lump sum, and give them to better themselves, we expect when they settle down, that's what we say, when they settle in their jobs, that they either repay us, either monthly lump sum, or if not, when we get old in our 80s, 90s, that they will take care of us. Listen to me. We have to manage those expectations.
Yeah.
I'm not saying, I remember saying something like this, and my daughter was around and she said, Mommy, I think you are sure? I will mind you. Why you must say that? And I said, face reality. That may be your intention today. But
Look at the
next 10,
trajectory.
15, 20 years, one, I'm not sure if you could go before me, but the other thing is, so many things can happen that could throw off those things. So we are chatting here about facing reality of these things. and
And
being real
Jennifer,
with the expectations.
one of the things, and this is a blunt statistic, and I'm saying this again from my involvement in a financial institution. We have to look, our children are in their 30s and 40s.
Mm-hmm.
The general rule is if you've not settled, meaning however you choose to settle, home ownership, whatever it is, if
Yeah.
you've not settled by 45, it is very unlikely that you will settle in the way that you want to. And for many of us, the financial reality today is that we have to carry our 30 plus, 35, 40, 45-year-old children. Either, if not carrying them, we carrying the grandchildren because they can barely keep themselves together.
Yeah.
If that is the reality, again, this is a blunt truth. It is going to be unlikely that if we are 60 now, when we're 80, 20 years, if we're 70, it's 10 years. In 10 or 20 years' time, they may not be in a stronger position. So how on earth could you be expecting a reciprocity for your pension money from your retirement money that you're spending now? Again, what is required, I think sometimes, is either you decide, I am going to draw down the funds now, and like our police commissioner, trust in God, while I'm still trying to do my best, or you let the children know, do we have some hard decisions that's better to make now than later? You may decide to invest in excellent education, kindergarten, preschool, primary, and then with that foundation, they could go on with the free education.
Yeah.
You may decide, do the best with the free education for kindergarten, primary, secondary, and save the money for. But if our children are adults, and most, I think for many of us, Jennifer, they are nowhere near where we were when we were 30, 40,
I agree.
50.
That's very true.
And they're not going, they don't have enough time to get there. So it means that you are asking them, when their children are adults too, to add yourself on as a child. You know, hard decisions. When we talk about how are we relating to our adult children and the kinds of expectations, you know, we come back to this thing, we're passing on our hopes to them, our disappointments, but we need to take stock and be real. What is the situation now? How long are we to live? Make sure you put on your life vest.
Yeah.
You know, put on your life vest first.
There are ways that we can do it, but you only get open to you'll find solutions when you face the reality.
Yeah.
You know? So we need to look at what we're doing. For instance, we know well, it's not too late for many because we're dealing with 50 plus. You're looking at what are the challenges that normally happens at 80, 90. Let's say it like that. And you look at your family history, that most likely what could occur. And you decide, okay, do you have a medical plan in place just in the event of that you don't have to depend on them for the full amount that they can pay that, you know? You look at okay, and again, it comes to discussion. What would you like? I remember my dad at 90, they recommended a certain operation, and he told us, listen, at this age, I am okay. Do not take my little money to pay because it wasn't to go to the general hospital because, you know, that's in terms of weight, etc., etc. So the doctor suggested, of course, the private institution, and that was a certain cost. And he made the decision that, listen, all right? Because he wasn't in that, in terms of that pain and all that, but he decided that, and in telling us that, he also said how to spend his money. Okay. But we have you may not make that same decision. I'm not saying you would, but you have to start to think, okay, what may be my greatest needs then? And if I cannot depend on or I don't want to have my sibling to be dependent on my children, but what can I put in place to help? Even if you tell them, and that's the other thing we don't do at Terrian. We tend not to say, except we say what we don't want. You know, we're quick to say, don't put us in a nurse, and don't put us in a home. Don't do that. Don't take, oh, we have this. Don't take us to the general hospital. Don't, they have those who say that a lot. Because at the general hospital, they don't take care of you. At the home for the aged, they treat you bad. And we have all the list of things. Don't. And if you answer against that, then okay, if I don't do that, then what should I do? You can't get the answer. So this is where we have to start thinking, okay, this is all what you don't want. What do you want? And do you have the money at that time for the things that you want?
And if you
Forget
don't,
the
then you can't get it.
dependency on your children, where they have 1, 2, 3, 4. My mom, we always say, still alive at 101, and we tell her she had 7. If 4 gone, you still have 3. We don't have, most of us, I should say, 1, 2, 3. May have those with 4. And in Terrian case was 4 and 3 overseas. So try, base your life, base your future on what you can afford for you. And in that way, then you won't be just freely, I'm not saying not to support, get me right, but you won't freely pay for the prep school when you can't afford and they could go to a good primary school.
Yeah.
All right. Or pay for the education overseas, which is a lot of money, when you could look at a local institution. These are the decisions and a reality check.
And Jennifer, right? I would say on the, and because I know our time is tight, on the issue of elder care and that thing, you see these lists of don't do me this and don't do me that and don't do me the other. I always remember when I was going on vacation last year, because I was going on my vacation and I did my priority list and I left it with my parents' caregivers, and my father was so upset because I have the funeral director name and number on the thing. And I said, yes, if you pass and the police come or you die at home, if you don't get her involved, you'll go in the morgue in the general hospital. You want to go there? And you really have to not make decisions on emotion. And my dad, he's alive, he's watching me now, and he knows this is something we talk about, and I have no problem sharing it. His list of don't do this and don't do that was as long as you could have it. His list said, continue the life that my wife maintained for me, and I must live like a king. And I looked at him and I said, show me the bank account that is supporting this life. When he couldn't show it to me, I said, well, this is what we will do. And he is, now I could have turned myself to water again, dig up my own resources to make sure that I am expecting to live until about 95, 98. Crash that plan. To what end? We really have to, and it doesn't mean that you don't love your parent or love your sibling or love your children, but it means that you are practical, and most importantly, you also love yourself. Because when you sacrifice your current earnings without a plan of how you will provide for yourself, when you know, and I think this is the kicker, Jennifer, when you know that your children's situation is such that they will barely continue to carry themselves and their children, and there is no room for you. Then you're setting yourself up for stress when you're old and can't take the stress. So we really have to look at life, take off the shades and the rose-colored glasses and all the old blinkers and the things in our heads once we say, oh, what a hope, a wish, especially when it has to do with what your well-being is going to be in how much years' time, because both you and your children might end up homeless.
Terry, and that is so important because, again, some of us would have mortgaged our homes to help out situations,
Education,
right?
to education.
And we may have gotten, and we remortgage, and because the bank know your home, the assets is more, etc., you get that money. And you would have been paying it, and they normally at this our age, at about 60, if the credit union also give you loan, it's because they know you're getting your little NIS and a pension. They will check that first, and they will work out, yes, you can afford to upkeep maybe for 5, 10 years again. But listen, when situation change, and you can't depend on that same child or whoever family member that you help out. You know, and I have a personal situation like that. You can lose your property as a result of that, or you signed over. I think Bernard again mentioned that when he spoke about mortgages and how assets. Listen, when you do that and you sign, sometimes they say they didn't know. In the personal situation I had at the time, the owner didn't know. He didn't know when he signed it to his son to use as security that it meant like he gave him, we gave it to the bank actually, not even to this, he gave it to the bank. The bank now owns it. And if the son or whoever you give it to don't pay, then you lose out. And I'm saying this because there's still many people out there not understanding when they sign a security.
Or afraid
what
to find out. Or afraid.
Yeah.
This is 2023 people, 5.8 G, we in 2023. That is 1960, 1970 behavior. And we cannot have that fear of finding out the truth and being real about where we are, because it is going to jeopardize our well-being moving forward. Geez, Jennifer, that was an intense in-tune session.
Terry Ann, this topic that we are discussing, we can go on and on and on, but we don't have the time. All right? But we look forward for our next show where we're hoping to get some of the younger people to come on, the younger generation, just to share with us and to give us their thoughts. Yeah?
I would say that what we really want you to do, in addition to subscribing and pressing the bell for notifications, when you're looking at all the other videos, they tell you to do it and you do it. So do it with us. Yes.
Click that subscribe button.
Yes. What we have to really do as the 5.HG cohort in 2023 is really do an assessment of whether some of the values that we are trying to maintain and values, but really conditions and circumstances we're trying to drag on that reality cannot support. And Jennifer, I think in most instances we know, and when we just hoping or expecting, and we deep down are afraid to find out. And if it's impossible for us to find out, make the assumption, all right, it ain't what we're going to hope for, and see what you could put in place.
Yeah, because we have to face that reality. Many of us are so disappointed with where we are or our family situation, but we have to move on. We have to live and live the best life that we can, regardless of the circumstances. Yeah.
Great. And that doesn't mean abandon the children and the grandchildren, huh? We are not abandoning the grandchildren.
No, we are not. We love the grandchildren and the children, but we have to be realistic with our love.
So
Yeah.
join us next week. We're going to hear how our children, our adult children, look at our cohort. I might have to zip up my mouth.
Yeah. Definitely. Okay. So we say bye for now, right?
Yeah.
50 Plus Tribe and follow us from Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean.
Thank you for joining us on this Connections 50 Plus 5.8G Alive show.
We hope you enjoyed the lively conversation and look forward to seeing you next week.
Don't forget to like our Facebook page and subscribe to our YouTube channel.
We really love getting your feedback. Bye
Bye
for
for
now.
now.